Tenderloin is a neighborhood in the heart of downtown San Francisco. It's bounded by Geary, Powell, Taylor, and Market Streets. For many young people, it's the ultimate refuge from a disapproving society. Here, youth with unacceptable behavior problems congregate in protective obscurity. From time to time, their obscurity is shattered by newspaper publicity, which alerts the rest of the city to some of the more lurid Tenderloin problems. 124 prostitutes arrested, 119 heroin addicts uncovered, 18 teenagers arrested in an orgy, 366 male prostitutes discussed in a report. But the Tenderloin is, after all, more than lurid headlines. It is people, young people seeking an identity in a complex and massively changing society. Somehow these people are trying to cope with the challenges all America increasingly faces.
There are people down there that abuse methadone. They abuse crystal, which is a slang term for meth. They let the drug use them. They get psychologically hung up on it, and they feel that they just can't live without it. They've got to have it every single day, and that's what their, waking hours are devoted to, is to be getting more crystal. If they're really, really badly hung up, they'll start, getting anything they can, won't even bother to clean their outfits, which is a good way to come down with hepatitis.
I don't like the Tenderloin. So you really, because I see people out there, man, who ain't got nowhere to go and nothing to do, and they're on the same old kick all the time, every time. And I was down there and I got on that kick, and it was a groove for a while. Like you jumped up in the bag and you stayed there for a while, and it was groovy. But then after a while, like, man, you just looked up and said, well, one of these days, I'm going to be real, real old, man. I'm going to be still down here doing the exact same thing I did yesterday, the day before yesterday, last month, 6 months ago, a year ago. Man, I better climb out of this bag and find me another one, So, that's the reason I don't like Tenderloin, man.
Yeah, it's a jungle. It's like a people trap, and the people there, you can't trust anybody. They can be your best friend and, walk off with your wardrobe or something. And I kind of feel sorry for the kids because they go down there and they don't know anybody at first. They get mixed up with the dope heads and everything. They may not have wanted this, but they'll do it just to go along with the crowd. And pretty soon they end up pushers and things, and they become unhappy.
Whereas if you go to a regular shrink, a regular psychiatrist, just sit down and say, well, he knows it all, and this is, they'll base it on Grandpa Freud, and this is the reason for that and the other thing. But it doesn't always go go that way. A shrink man can go home every day to his nice, comfortable pad, and forget about what's happening. But when you live down here and you see it day in and day out, 24 hours a day, and hear it at night, you don't forget. It's a burning reminder in your head.
Oh, why do I take meth? I guess because it's sort of an escape. It's, to me, it seems a safer escape route than acid or the mass media. And when I take meth, I use it to intensify my senses. It sharpens my insight. And being an artist, I'm able to really do great things.
How often do you take it?
Oh, I use it about maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks.
Is methadone addicting?
No, it's not physically addicting. If you allow yourself to get too dependent on it, it causes a psychological addiction. This happened to me when I first started using it. Well, I'd been in California, in San Francisco, for a few months. And it was hard finding a job. And I had pushed grass before in other cities. And I heard, I'd heard about meth and how groovy it was. So this friend of mine was pushing, and I told him I could give him a hand because I knew a lot of these people I was hanging around where a lot of meth freaks live and hung out. And he said, fine. So about 2 or 3 weeks after I started pushing it, you know, I decided to try it. And it was great, really. I did OD the first time I tried it, but you know, then I just, you know, was very careful. Although I wasn't too careful, because after a couple of months I started getting very hung up on it. And started losing weight from not eating, and you know, really showing the signs of exhaustion. And almost ended up in the hospital with malnutrition.
They become old hustlers. Yeah. Old hustlers, they start doing time because they start building the record. And you get to the point where, you know, they say, well, you know what, man, I can't get out of this, you know. I mean, you go down there a young kid and you say, oh, look, you know, look at this man, he's groovy. And then you become older and you get a little harder and you get a little bitter. And you say, well, hell with it, you know. I'm going to keep on doing this, you know, because I really don't think people in Tenderloin live too long, man, really. I never seen no old person in Tenderloin except for the more people who've been living there all their life, yeah. You know, you don't see no old people out in the streets, you know, trying to make it, or on the street, you know, like most people I know down in Tenderloin. You see, so either they finally get out of their bag and go off somewhere else, or, you know, they just stay down there, man, or die. You know, that's not a very good prospect, man. Yeah. I just thought about that. I've never seen no old people out there in Tenderloin. Yeah. That weaks me. It does. Yeah. Oh.
Now, when we're talking about the problems down here, I think it must be very obvious to you that we do have a drug abuse problem of enormous magnitude. In a study prepared by the Central City Multi-Service Center called Drugs in the Tenderloin, original research done by addicts and ex-addicts and even pushers that we hired to work on this project disclosed a very large population of young persons in the Tenderloin area using drugs. Now, we figure that the Central City area, the Tenderloin area, in the Central City area, I should say, has a population of about 7,000 to 10,000. Now, that population, we have uncovered such facts as there may be 125 to 150 users or abusers of methadone or crystal, as they call it. There may be as many as 100 users of heroin. There are large numbers of young persons using amphetamines, stimulant and depressant pills. And of course you have a large number of people who are using acid and acid-like derivatives. The drug traffic in the Tenderloin is quite extensive. Our estimate from a very authoritative source in the drug pushing scene is that the total exchange in dollars in a month's period is about $280,000. The street that we're walking down, called Market Street, or the Meat Rack, is a center for homosexual or male prostitution. The age of these young persons being from, the youngest we've seen thus far is 12 to about 18, 19, 20, 21. The older ones tend to go into the homosexual or the gay bars that abound in this section of town.
Are these people that live here?
Many of these people are young children who are runaways, others who come here from all over the country and live here in the cheap hotels. Quite often the only homes they really have are the streets.
Yeah.
Many of them are middle-class children. They are here on the weekends hustling for either the excuse is to make money, but basically, of course, I think they're probably down here to have homosexual activity, or sometimes poor kids from the surrounding poverty areas, say Hunters Point or Western Addition. They're down here to make money. But you don't have what we like to call a hardcore of degenerate children. It's a kind of a large spectrum. Many of them are middle-class kids out for kicks. They're looking for sex and they're looking for money. It becomes quite a problem and will become more of a problem when the subway gets here. Now, this is something that...
One of the people who has worked the longest in the Tenderloin area is Mark Forrester, area organizer for the Central City Anti-Poverty Program. Mr. Forrester, well acquainted with the people and the problems here, is working in the poverty program to change these circumstances. Recently, he conducted both the regional and national directors of the American Social Health Association through this ghetto.
New structures and new designs put up, I think this thoroughfare, unless we deal with it in a realistic way, is going to become a much bigger center for this sort of activity. It's also very significant that since the Hilton Hotel has been built, which was about 3 or 4 years ago, the young people down here are finding a much more satisfactory source of money. The businessmen who fly into San Francisco and who couldn't dare do this sort of thing at home go to the Hilton, come down, buy the little boy, check into the cheap hotel, have their sex, drop him off $5 richer, and go back to the Hilton Hotel, and everybody's safe. If you were to stand here for an hour, you could watch the pickups being made, you could watch the young boys being accosted, the discussion of price, they go off, and you see the kid back an hour later ready for his next session. All this conducted very obviously without any, any real attention, big deal.
Yeah, when you got a hang-up, that's what you do.
You know that girl Lee, she just got out of the hospital. Remember Lee, man? She took an OD. In fact, she really took an OD.
The one that was
in fact,
in a coma for about 6 weeks.
Yeah, in fact, it killed half her brain.
Beautiful.
Literally killed half her brain. I sorted her out the other day.
But,
I was there when she got out. I said, why'd you do it? It's all behind some chick. Is it someone I want? I said, who do you want? I almost dropped out of my shoes when she said me. This is no lie.
I know.
And I said, why me? And she says, well, I respect you so much, because a lot of kids, they do. Because, you're such a symbol. If they only knew what I was really made of, they'd have a heart attack.
Yeah.
But she's doing all right. She got her kid back now.
Yeah, I know.
But that was something. They thought that was touch and go, though. Half a head. You left your brain.
That's part of the reason that she did it, too, because she was afraid she was going to lose the baby. They were going to take it away
they would try to take it away from her. I don't think it's getting hard down here. You can't get hold of any drugs.
I know.
What you get is, you can't tell if you get Ajax cleanser or whatnot.
Oh, you can once you get it into you. Lately, like I've been doing pretty good, but when I first started using, you remember last year, when I was really righteously hung up on crack.
Yeah.
And you was going through, about an ounce a week. Losing weight, getting paranoid as hell.
He put me through more changes, man. He gets so paranoid there's someone at the door, or they think they're coming to get him. No, I can't do this because someone's going to be waiting there. In fact, you went through this kick that, man, I can't go out in the street. This guy's out gunning for me, He's out gunning for me. I said, well, I'll go with you. No, you can't. You'll get killed, too. And actually, there was no one out in the street waiting. Of course not.
Yeah,
he made up
it was
this
all up here.
Fantabulous story. Like I got in trouble back here, and this guy followed me 3,000 miles across the United States just to kick his butt.
There you go. And of course, we have the problem is the civic leaders and most of the citizens of the city simply do not know what is going on. Their own children are becoming involved in these activities. No, they're not being led astray by adults. They're being led into this stuff by their peers. A young kid today doesn't learn to take drugs because somebody who's 24 years old comes down and gives him drugs. Somebody who's 16 or 17, his own age, gets them involved.
It's not the pusher looking around the corner.
No, it is not the pusher looking around the corner. It's not the homosexual looking around the corner who gets these young people on homosexual activity. They're learning from their own groups. And furthermore, it's very obvious to us who've been working down here that they are not going to respond to lectures. They're not going to respond to warnings. They're not going to respond to all kinds of hell-raising and warnings about perdition and damnation. In fact, many of the young drug abusers down here have justified and thought out arguments they think are rational for the use of drugs, why they can use them, and should use them. And the standard reply is, well, look at alcohol. Now, alcohol is a drug, isn't it? Look at how many adult Americans abuse alcohol. And they get involved in car accidents, and they beat their wives up, and they do all kinds of dangerous and destructive things while they're high on alcohol. Yet alcohol is a socially approved drug. And we abuse it every day. Millions of alcoholics in the country. Now, why should we be denied the use of pot or crystal or methadone when adults are running around getting drunk? Now, what reply do you have? Well, do what I say, but don't do what I do. Well, they aren't going to buy it. They aren't going to buy hypocrisy. The kids who are staying down here in the Tenderloin, they just aren't going to buy this business of the equitable enforcement of law, the fuzz. Why is it that the fuzz always arrests the young Negro girls down here? Again, out of 124 girls arrested in that raid in the Tenderloin, 120 were Negro. What about all the white girls? Why aren't they getting arrested? Why are only the female prostitutes getting arrested? Why aren't the male prostitutes getting arrested? Now, these kids, by the time they're 19 or 20, are pretty well caught up in the realistic concept. There's an awful lot of phoniness going on in America. There's an awful lot of plain old elevated crap being put out. On one hand, this is the way we talk. On the other hand, under the table, this is the way we deal. Corrupt politicians, corrupt judges, corrupt businessmen, the whole bit.
That's the life, right?
I woke up the next day. I didn't even really wake up. There was somebody pounding my face, and I didn't even feel it. And they were going, I didn't feel a thing. And they walked me, and I hate coffee. I hated coffee before I had coffee that day. They pounded that coffee into me, and pounded that coffee into me, and pounded that coffee into me, and that was it. Why do I feel like I want to commit suicide? Because a person gets tired, really, of, you know, keep on getting kicked down and made to eat dirt and getting kicked down and getting up, you know, and after a while, you get pretty damn tired. You know, there's only so much, you know, a human can take, really. You know, when you just get tired, you run out of energy, you run out of guts to keep on stepping. But and to me, it takes guts to call it quits, too.
Was it this feeling that started you on drugs?
No. I attended my first suicide when I was, I guess, 18. It was behind another girl. And a lot of other things. Things weren't going all that well, you know. Well, I fall in love with this girl, and she wouldn't have me, and of course there was a big age gap anyway. And I just took about 3,200 milligrams of tranquilizers during the day. No, I took about 1,200 during the day and 3,200 at night. And about a quarter of a bottle of straight bourbon. And when I took it, I knew, you know, I might not go to sleep, you know, I might not wake up. And I didn't care. The next time I did it was when I was in the hospital and had my second nervous breakdown when I was 24. And the doctor had left the room, and they had let me have a razor, you know, to fix my radio. And I figured he'd be out about 5 minutes on that phone call, and I slit my wrist. So I got about 15 stitches divided between 2 wrists. But after I came out of hospital when I was 18, I was an addict, you know, so I usually got my prescriptions refilled, you know, and say I lost them. But after a while, I just had to go get my drugs myself because I have such a high constitution of drugs. I was taking mainly tranquilizers and imported pills, any pills I could get my hands on, because I refused to mainline, stick it in my arm. Why? Because that leaves visible tracks. And I'd rather, you know, have tracks that you can't see, you know, tracks in your mind, because you can bluff that. But you can't bluff anything that's physical. And when your arms are all messed up, you know, that's a telltale sign. You know, anybody can see it, you know. But with pills, I know it kills your mind, you know, it kills it and kills it. But any of these drugs would kill it. But that's not as telltale.
I think a sane policy is one that first involves education to the dangers of using drugs. Secondly, a policy which defines the intelligent use of drugs, because we aren't going to abolish, as far as I can see, abuse of drugs. We apparently don't have the legal means to dry up the sources. And in fact, in the American economy, where everything's based on profit and people are making money off these things, I don't believe that the American way of life, if I may use that phrase, allows us to dry up the heroin business. People are making millions of dollars off of this.
What made you first introduce you to drugs and pushing it?
The tenderloin.
The tenderloin. How do you like it? How do you find it like to push it?
Well, the tenderloin is a rough life, but at least you're free. That's what counts.
Do you find it hard getting your drugs? I mean, with the heat, the police, and everything?
Not really. It depends if you really want to get into it or if you want to avoid it, you know. It's all over like confetti. Well, I did 4 years in a can, and I know what they're, you know, what they do and how they work. And I've been around it long enough that I know what's happening, you know.
Are you cautious to the people you sell to?
Well, if you're selling, it depends. You know, some guys want to go to jail, some guys want to stay out, you know. Some guys want to get ahead, some guys want to get a damn. Depends on what element you're in, I guess. You know.
What I'm driving at is the people you sell, you sell junk to. How can you size them up as to whether or not they're a bull?
You don't. Because you can sell the bulls, you know. Some guy can be an agent, you know, and you can sell to him too. Like police officers, they buy, just like anybody else. They're all human, you know.
And they don't bother you at all?
No, no.
Do you ever carry the stuff with you?
No.
That's smart.
Right. No, it's just like anything else. It's a product that's in demand. You supply the product, and you supply the demand. Just like a grocery store or anything else, I guess.
Can you tell me something about the people who want the supply? You know, just tell me some of your clients. Tell me about it.
Well, it could be teachers. It could be a bum. You know, it could be a woman, a dancer. Secretaries, bus drivers, truck drivers, you know. I mean, just about everybody figures if you don't smoke grass or if you don't take this or take that, you're out. You know, so they want to be at the in crowd, so they get with this, you know.
About how much do you sell in one day? Say, give me an example of a good day and a bad day. About how much cash and stuff will pass in.
Some days you can make $50, some days you can make $100. It depends. It depends on how strong your game is and how good your supply is and how steady it is and how much you get around, how much you really want to sell.
Do you ever have any trouble with your supplies?
No, you can get it anywhere. I mean, if you know the people, you know.
What do you do with the money you make?
Spend it.
On what?
Anything. I mean, fun, you know, apartment, hotel, or food, or clothing, car. What are you going to spend it on? You know, you're born, you live, you die, right? It's a short life, right? So live it while you can, right?
Could you give me a description, you know, of a day of pushing? You know, what you might do, you know?
Well, some guys, they stay in one spot and everybody comes to them. Other guys, they go around Broadway, they go to Haight-Ashbury here, and they got a couple of clubs. Other guys, they've got bars or nightclubs with a bartender or whoever might be there will, you know, turn them on to customers, or they might even supply the bartender with stuff, you know, so the bartender's making money. Everybody makes money. The pusher makes money, the supplier makes money, the people are satisfied. I don't know why they should just go to the drugstore and get a prescription and buy it themselves, but it's just like anything else.
You sell most of your drugs and everything to people in the Tenderloin or people out of the Tenderloin?
Everywhere. People come from South Toledo, they come from San Jose, they come from Oakland, Mission, Fillmore, Haight-Ashbury. They come from all over.
What are your biggest sellers?
Bennies, Dexies, reds, yellows, grass. Things like that.
Tell me, if you're given a choice, you know, if somebody gave you a choice of getting out of it, you know, living a nice, straight, square life, you know, and you'd be able still to come down and say hello to your friends and everything, would you take it?
Sure. Sure would.
What's keeping you from doing it?
Interest, motivation, woman, I guess.
You go to some person's house, you know, and you sit up there, and everything looks nice and respectable, you know, and suddenly, you know, after, you know, everybody leaves, as everybody goes to bed, you know, you get a little room back there, and everybody starts pulling out the drugs out the drawer, or under the carpet, something like that, you know, and says, come on, let's get down, you know, and I stood back there and I wigged, you know. I says, wow, you know, I never expected from, you know, these people, you know, what they do.
Sure, it's groovy to be on pills, but I tell you one thing, it's even more groovier, you know, and better just to exist, you know, on your own 2 feet without any crutches, you know. And I don't care what these people down here say, but they envy that person driving a halfway decent new car or a new car, going home to a nice place that don't stink to high heaven when you get home because it's so old and musty and everything, you know. And they'd like to have that because it presents a lot of security, you know, and everything. And half these kids, they come home to a hole in the wall, which stinks to high heaven, no clothes. Half the time you haven't even got the money or the soap to wash them with, you know. And that's no life. It really isn't. To me, it's not. I can't see people suffer needlessly. And I don't think that the majority of the people know what's happening. Push the kids down here, they'll just look and work, you know, for their next fix. And they work for their next fix. And after they get that, you know, they have a groovy time with the rest of the kids, you know, shooting up, you know, and enjoying the high and everything. And they don't think about tomorrow. But I'm very conscious of tomorrow, man. I've got a 3-year-old kitten. She's a very pretty kitten. She's very intelligent. And I don't want this life for her. I'm gay. And even if I dress up femme and whatnot, to a lot of het people, you know, they'll read me as being gay. And when I worked out at this hotel back in Long Island, New York, the hotel owner blackmailed me and said I either go to bed or I lose my job. Well, I just had 3 weeks of yogurt, you know, 1 yogurt a day, and I was hungry, and I didn't want to lose my job. So I went to bed and got pregnant. And so I now have a kid, you know, but it's not the kid's fault, you know, the kid was born, so I kind of feel I got a responsibility. I feel that I'm the best of mothers, but under the circumstances existing now, I think I'm doing pretty much all right. The kid's happy.
People like you and I have been telling them they're defectives probably since the day they were born. They don't need any more of that. They need someone to tell them that they're a little bit better than, quite a bit better. In fact, they're just as good as anybody else. They just have a different sort of problem. Now, what is the difference between a girl who sells her body down here in prostitution and the married prostitute? The woman who gets married because it's a good business deal, and because she's been raised to believe she's got to get married, and if by the age 30 she isn't married, there's something wrong with her femininity. So she marries somebody, and they spend their life in a mutual hatred for the remainder of their years. I think the divorce rate in America speaks to a great deal of the real prostitution in American marriage.
Why?
Well, from last night's experience.
Tell me about it.
Well, yesterday I took Wyamine, you know, that inhaler. Took about a fourth of that, dropped it. Then I shot up about half a nickel of crystal and took a Dexedrine. And that trip itself was fine, you know, but the come down, wow. Well, when I was coming down, it was more physical, you know. At first, anything, my mind was okay. And then I started noticing that my hand was tingling. And I thought, well, I was just asleep and I didn't pay much attention to it. And then about 15 minutes later, I noticed I was still tingling, you know, and then I noticed my other hand was starting to do the same thing. And so I got kind of worried, and then my legs started in, and my arms. And then all of a sudden my fingers just got paralyzed in a funny position. You know, I didn't put them there, they just went that way. And I couldn't move them. And I really got, you know, paranoid about it. And so I had this guy, he was walking me around, you know, and making me exercise, and I finally came out of that about 10 minutes later. And then I thought I was okay, and I thought I'd come all the way down, you know, I felt real good. Then my hands started tingling again, and before I could, you know, work that out, well, everything started tingling all over me. And, you know, it really scared me, and so I was kind of hysterical, and it was sort of like you know, I was on acid again. And I thought I'd be over it today, but I'm still seeing hallucinations.
Like what?
Well, like, well, last night it was all kinds of monsters, you know, ugly-looking monsters leaping at me and everything. And today it's like, you know, regular people, but they're ghosty white, and they just come walking up to me and everything. It scares me. You know, I know they're not real, but still it's kind of scary.
If you have experiences like this and it really messes you up, why do you take drugs?
Oh, I'm not taking them anymore. I resigned. I quit. I mean, after last night, that just blew my mind, really.
Do you really mean that?
I really mean it. Believe me.
Have you ever said that before?
No.
Yes.
Not really.
Yes.
Well, not with intentions.
Tell me something about yourself, Grainy. You know, you know, how you first started to take drugs, a little bit about your past.
Well, I first started taking drugs about, you know, about December of last year. You know, I heard from friends, you know, how groovy they were and everything. I was kind of prejudiced at first because, you know, my parents were all against it and everything. So I didn't touch it for a while, and then I got curious, you know. I wanted to see what it was like, so I decided to take it just out of curiosity. And I just, after I took them, I liked them, you know. And so I just kept taking them.
When did you stop taking them?
I stopped taking them when I met you.
Did you ever feel that there was, did you ever wonder why you were taking them, and if there was a real need to take them?
I just took them because they made me feel good, like crystal methadone. Well, it made me brave, you know, I could talk to people. Well, when I'm not on drugs, well, I don't like to talk to people or, you know, say anything. I'm kind of an introvert. But with crystal meth, I just open up, you know, you can't stop me from talking. And I liked it.
How about the reasons why you went back to taking pills like dextrose?
Oh, well, after I started going with her, I quit, you know, because I really didn't need to take them. And then I started working at this clip joint here in San Francisco. And one of the rules of the house, I found out later, was you had to turn tricks for the house, you know. And I'd never done this before, and I've been brought up pretty morally, you know, and I didn't go for it, but I decided to try it because the money was good, you know, $50, $100 tricks. And so I started taking drugs, you know, to keep my mind off of it, which it did, you know. I knew what was going on, but it didn't matter then. And so the only time I would take drugs was when I had to, you know, do prostitution.
Why did you even have to do prostitution? Was it purely money?
Yeah, because, well, we were, you know, uptight for cash. We had a lot of bills. And I knew this was fast money, you know, easy money. Go to bed with a guy for 10 minutes, get $50 to $100, you know.
Why didn't you ever get a, you know, a legitimate job?
Well, they're kind of hard to find around here, you know, in San Francisco, unless you have the training for it, or your experience, you know, secretarial or something like that. And also, I have an undesirable discharge from the Army, and that stops me from getting a lot of jobs, you know, for security clearance.
Like what? What was the discharge for?
Homosexuality. I was in for, well, I lasted 6 months, and they caught me.
Can you tell me something about it?
About the Army?
Yeah, you know.
Well, I joined mostly to get away from home because my mother and I didn't get along, and I was in the country and there was no town, you know, I could go to that I knew any people in. And my dad was talking about the Army, how great it was for the women. And so I joined it, you know, just to make them happy and just to get away from home. And during basic, it was nice, it was patriotic, you know, and very beautiful. Hard work, but it was nice. And then I got stationed at Fort Sam Houston in Texas. It was medical corps. And it was just like living in a big whorehouse. You know, half of them were prostitutes, the other half homosexuals. It was pretty less, you know, free. And, but I didn't like it because, well, it screwed up the girls' minds. You know, good girls would come in there, you know, and they just turn out to be lousy, rotten people. And one of my best friends, I saw her kill herself, you know. She just stabbed herself. And that blew my mind right there. And this other girl, we started messing around, you know, and we got caught on the porch one night by our sergeant, who was gay herself. But to protect her, she told on us to the captain, who was gay too. And we got kicked out.
After you took your first acid trip, you had dreams, which always came true. Why don't you tell that?
Well, I went on this acid trip, and after that, I would dream something, and the next day it would come true, just like it happened in the dream. And this went on for months, and sometimes I'll still have dreams where it come true, you know.
Give some examples, like the guy with the gun.
I don't remember.
When you dreamt someone was coming after you with a gun.
Oh, yeah, I dreamt that this guy was going to come after me with a gun. I didn't know the guy, you know, I didn't see his face in the dream or anything. And so a couple nights later, we went down to where I work, and the bouncer and I had a big hassle together over some money. And he hit me and, you know, knocked me down. Then he hit her because she stepped in. And so I was threatening to kill him and everything. And so he had guys out after us, you know, with guns. And we had guys out after him. But, you know, it was quite like the dream.
There was another time, too, where she dreamt that somebody was going to come after her with a gun. And I think it was not that same night, but the night after, she turned a trick, and the trick pulled a gun on her.
It was what do you call those? What's a person that's both sexes?
Morphodite.
It was the morphodite. But I'd never seen one like this. You know, most of them had the female organs on top and the male organ on bottom, or vice versa. But this one had the male and female organ on the bottom, both. And that blew my mind. And it was crazy in the head. It kept thinking I was a guy. So I just, you know, politely was going to get out of there. And he kept saying how madly in love with me he was. And before I could leave, he pulled his gun on me. Well, I didn't know if it was loaded or not, you know, but I was going to take a chance. I just ran. And I got away, and I didn't shoot or anything. But
Are you happy?
Happy? When?
Just, you know, with your life, you know.
Not right now, because I'm unemployed right now, you know. I'd like to go into something like nursing, but that's kind of impossible with my discharge unless I can get it changed, which I'm hoping to do.
If you had an opportunity for a heterosexual relationship and good job, good family life, would you take it?
I've had the chance to, you know, marry nice guys and stuff, but no, because I don't, you know, dig guys. They're okay for people, but I don't like sex with them. I became gay when I was about 15, and during my high school years, I went out with guys, you know, and I tried going to bed with them several times. It just didn't do anything to me. And so I decided, you know, gay life is for me. I like it a lot better. And with this prostitution, it really ruined me on guys. You know, I even liked them before I started being a prostitute, but afterwards, ooh, forget it. Just animals, you know, as far as I'm concerned. And, well, as far as having a good job and a, you know, family life, you can have that in gay life. You know, there's a lot of people who have, you know, gay couples that have children, and the children can grow up normal. It all depends on how they're raised. And I feel, you know, I could be happy in gay life with a good job.
Plus, one thing that has to be taken into consideration, too, is that, speaking from a biological standpoint, she's only been able to be satisfied in a lesbian-type love instead of heterosexual, and that wasn't even until after she met me.
Yeah, men don't even turn me on.
Usually, the thought is that if you want help, then you're going to have to change your way of life.
Yeah, I was told that when I went to confession in church, man. Come back when you've changed.
I don't believe this should be true. I mean, if you want to be a certain way, I don't see why society shouldn't accept you, really. Like, you know, we're gay. Well, we can be accepted in San Francisco because, you know, there's so many gay people. But, like, if we're going to Missouri, well, we're not going to be accepted in a lot of places. And it's going to be hard. But I think they should accept us because we're people. We're just like them. We just have our own lives to live.
Many of these young persons down here are young homosexuals with sexual identity problems. If their parents discover they're homosexuals, this is usually it's just a big nasty scene. Oh, my son couldn't be a queer or fairy. There's something wrong with me. Why did this all have to happen? So ultimately, quite often the kid gets thrown out. Now he has nowhere to go. He has no skills. He's very, very young. And the alternatives probably are jail, juvenile halls, and other institutions in which the young homosexual is still at an enormous disadvantage. Because let's face it, in a jail or in a juvenile hall, he's still a pariah. Okay, he comes to the Tenderloin, and in the Tenderloin, he can survive. He can exist. Wow. He can cope because there are ways of surviving down here. There are modes of acceptance down here. There are various community supports down here. You aren't alone, for one thing. The whole world isn't against you for another thing.
He's less an outcast down
That's absolutely correct. He's less an outcast, and this is his community. And down here you build up ties. A lot of the people down here are really, in many instances, in better circle in their own homes and in their own communities.
It feels like I'm not even there, but I'm not here, you know. Like, I'm just laying here, just taking it easy. And I know you're there, but you're far away. Yeah.
You're sweating. You're feeling very hot?
Yeah, it's very hot in here. Yeah. And the higher I get, the hotter I get, you know.
I notice that your hands are trembling. Is that?
Yeah.
But you don't feel like you're trembling inside?
No, no.
You feel cool?
I feel nice and cool. Real cool, yeah.
Happy?
Pleasant, you know, like, nothing can bother me now.
Right. How long have you been taking drugs?
About 2 years. Yeah. I went from codeine, I went to crystal, and from crystal I went to smack.
What's smack?
Heroin.
How would you compare your present high with a heroin high?
Well, heroin high makes me sleepy. You know, like I just want to just lay down and just to give up the rest of the world and just lay there and just coast, you know, like going on a big river and just float and float and float and float. And this high, right now, you know, I'm here, but soon I'll get up and I'll start doing things and, you know, like cleaning up or you know, just walking or writing or reading, something like that, you know. But heroin high, I don't want to do nothing, just lay there. Yeah.
Where do you get most of the drugs that you use?
Sometimes I get turned on. Most of the time I go down to the connection and get it.
What sort of different drugs do you use?
Well, I go between smack and crystal, and I use disoxins every once in a while, but I mostly stick to stimulants, you know. And
why?
Because, well, on the natch, you know, I feel kind of down. You know, I don't feel like I want to do anything. I don't want to feel like I want to get out of bed. But when I take stimulants, it makes me feel like I want to get up and go and do things and accomplish something. You know, like on the natch, I have no drive. You know.
How old were you when you started taking drugs?
I was 22.
Do you think that most people get introduced to drugs by taking marijuana?
Yeah, I think, you know, most people get introduced to drugs by, you know, people they meet, their friends, or, you know, or going to a party, or just a bunch of guys getting together and saying, you know, I know where to get some pot at, and, you know, and you want to try it out, and, you know, you say, yeah, well, I'm with the rest of the fellas, you know.
Is pot usually the first drug people try?
Well, that's the first drug most of my friends have tried, you know.
And you would say that taking pot leads to taking other drugs?
No, I wouldn't, man. No, let's go inside. I would say hanging around with people who do take other drugs leads to taking other drugs. Yeah. Yeah.
How long can a man keep taking these drugs and live?
And live? Well, if you keep taking... Well, it depends. Well, drugs take things from you, man. You know?
What?
Now, it all depends what kind of drug you're taking. Like stimulants, I mean, they take it eat up on your calcium in your body. And they keep on working like that, you know. And, you know, and eventually, you know, your bone structure breaks down, and you don't eat and you don't sleep. So, therefore, you know, I say, if you take drugs and don't eat and don't sleep for about a week or something, or maybe even less than that, man, you're going to either pass out or freak out, one or the other. Yeah.
But how long can a man keep taking drugs like this before it eventually starts getting to him? 30, 40, 50?
No. You mean take drugs the way I take them? Up to 30, 40, 50? I don't know. I really don't know. I've seen, you know, some old guys, you know, who've been taking drugs, you know, but, and, you know, like one guy walks down the street, talks to himself, you know, but, I walk down the street, talk to myself, too. I don't feel nothing unusual about that, you know, but, I think you can take drugs instantly as long as you don't, you know, take them to the point where you need them, you know, or you have to have them, you know. That's, you know.
Would you like to stop taking drugs?
No, not really. Yeah, I'll have to eventually, but because I abuse myself sometimes. Sometimes I'll stay up for a whole week, you know, without sleeping, or, you know, I'll go on, you know, for 2 or 3 days, you know, without eating and stuff like that. And I get sick, you know. And when I get sick, I say, well, I won't do it no more, and blah, 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 blah. As soon as I feel better, I go right back and do the same thing. So eventually I'm going to get so sick I will never get well, you know. So that's eventually what will stop me from doing it, man, yeah.
You'll get so sick you won't be able to get well?
No.
You'll get so sick you'll have to stop?
Altogether, yeah. Or so sick you'll stop or either die, you know, one or the other.
We're not interested in keeping them in a place for the rest of their life. We want to make them strong enough to go out to the very streets in which they were shooting before, but not to shoot. Because there's no point in people taking people out of an environment and saying they're cured. Because someday they may have to go back in that environment, and if they're not ready to cope with that environment, they're not going to be in any condition.
You know, I've got these scars on my arms, and I could have them removed, but it would be expensive. You know, and they're going to be there for the rest of my life. You know, that sort of puts a little doubt in my mind. It makes me a little ashamed of myself. But the way I look at it, if people don't want to take me as I am, you know, as a human being first, you know, they don't have to know me at all. Because I'm not a drug user first. I'm a human being before I'm anything else. The drug use is just one facet of my personality. I don't feel that I'm doing myself any harm.
People are greatly ignorant, you know, to say other people like us. You know, when they see us passing the street, and if we're not dressed all that well, or we're dressed different and everything, we're thought of as freaks or fiends, as, you know, solely bad people without any heart, without any emotion, you know, and they shouldn't think like this, but then they don't know the facts, you know, haven't been brought face to face with them so they can see, you know, for real. You know, this is how it is.
That's life, you know? I mean, it's geared in such a way to make money, right? You live in a city, you gotta have money to eat, right? It's just life. What can I tell you? Some guys like to work their butt off, other guys do what I'm doing, or girls do what she's doing, or do what you're doing. It depends on how you're satisfied, you know. Some guys like to beat the law or rob banks or whatever. Well, you know, that's just the way that's what makes the world go around, you know. I mean, there's prostitutes on the streets and there's presidents, you know.
Did anybody ever told you to stop taking drugs?
Yeah.
What was your reaction?
I said, why? And they said, well, you know, you're ruining yourself. I said, yeah, I know it. And they said, well, what are you? You know, I mean, you got some type of, you know, death wish or something like that? I said, I don't know, man, you know, but I'm doing something that I want to do. And I've been doing it, you know, and I'm going to continue doing it until I stop wanting to do it, you know. And so if I'm hurting myself, I'm not hurting you, so like mind your damn business, you know.
I think you just begin essentially first by extending to them the same sense of dignity that you want for yourself. I mean, you just have to begin there. Everybody who's a human being has a certain amount of dignity. That's minimal, but you give it to everybody regardless of what they are.
To turn on, even if you turn on, it is unlikely you have been a junkie. This man is a junkie. He is addicted to heroin, and he is just 20 years old. So what? You say he's a loser with problems. He grew up in a ghetto, maybe, or he wasn't cool enough to handle his dope and he went too far. It's a typical establishment picture of a dope user. This is what the adults want you to think of when they want to frighten you off dope, right? Right. Adults don't really know where it's at when it comes to drugs, but you know where it's at. Okay, then just for kicks, remember this man. You'll see him again in this film. But right now, we're going to take a trip. We're going to take a journey in time. Let's go back to 1966. Remember that year? The Beatles were on a tour of the United States. They were loose and young, and they had a great new sound. And the sound alone could turn you on. If you had been Paul McCartney or John Lennon in those days, you were becoming rich, famous, and successful. And you were experimenting with drugs. If you were a boy named Donnie Jacobs in 1966, you lived in a comfortable home in Middle America. You were in high school. You dug money and rock music, so you joined a small rock group to try and make some bread. Some of the songs you listened to told you that turning on was the thing to do. It sounded good, and you wanted to turn on, to try it just once. You wanted to try marijuana, but you couldn't find any. But you read somewhere that sniffing glue would get you high. Donnie Jacobs and his friends held glue parties on the weekends in 1966, and sure enough, they got high, and they liked it. The drug songs had promised them a new world, and here it was.
My destiny to be trapped in the walls of time.
What the songs did not tell them, and what they did not know, was that frequent inhalation of glue vapors can kill brain cells. Brain damage can be so severe that some glue sniffers become retarded for life. But Donnie was getting high, and that's what mattered. And while he and his friends went up, they listened to rock music. Across town, a marijuana party, thrown by the manager of that rock group. He knew that teenagers like Donnie wanted to be turned on by drug music. And while the manager and his friends smoked pot, they too listened to rock music. The drug rock community has its own form of class structure. At the top are the major rock artists. Many of them are on hard drugs. Down the scale are people like this local rock group manager, trying to play it big time and hoping he can make it by recording drug songs and by turning on. At the bottom are teenagers like Donnie. They want to be where it's at. Everyone who's groovy is telling them to turn on. But something went wrong for Donnie. He got high on glue, but it was a bummer. He crashed. It was a bad scene for Donnie, and he could have learned a hard lesson about drugs right here. That glue sniffing, like drugs, fixed the memory. And although Donnie suffered on this trip, he remembered very little about it. All he could recall was the good part, going up. Unable and unwilling to remember the misery of bad trips, Donnie and his friends continued to turn on. And eventually, in 1967, they found some marijuana. They were not a success as rock musicians, but they had begun to climb the social scale in drugs. Now on pot, they turned on again and they found their inspiration in rock music.
Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. Gonna try with a little help from my friends.
The drug movement was hitting big in 1967, and there was lots of talk about a new mind-expanding drug called LSD. Light shows became immensely popular because they simulated some of the experiences caused by LSD. Adults went to light shows, and although they condemned the young for using drugs, the adults themselves were hooked by a passion to stay young and experience new things. This psychedelic freakout was staged in Donnie's hometown. It was organized by people like Donnie's parents. It cost $10,000 to produce, and so they charged $100 a ticket for the straight society to experience a fake acid trip. The freakout was given enormous publicity, and as a result, ballrooms all over town began to give light shows. Teenagers who had never turned on went to the light shows. They were fascinated and stimulated by them. And some of them, listening to the songs telling them to turn on, decided to experiment with drugs. Donnie and his friends were excited by the light shows, and they too wanted to try this latest trip, this LSD. The problem was to find some. At about this time, a man called John came to town from San Francisco. He was friendly, a clean-cut man. There was nothing about John which warned Donnie and his friends that he was dangerous. John threw an LSD party, and Donnie and his friends were more than willing to try this new fad. What John did not tell them was that LSD could cause serious damage to their bodies and their minds, that a single bad trip could follow them through the rest of their lives, that they were getting in deeper and deeper into the drug world. Instead, John, an LSD user himself, told them about San Francisco. He told them of the love-ins, of the freedom, and of how the hippies there were forming their own society. The free LSD and the alluring stories made a fascinating party. No one had a bad trip. It was all very good. That time.
It really was fun. It was fun. And ever since then, I found out where to get it.
It's really weird because, I'm a nice, easygoing guy, and I don't like violence or anything. But like my partner's, man, like he's just got arrested for first-degree murder, and he's one of the uptight people.
A few days after this party, the teenagers in Donnie's town held their first love-in. It wasn't much, and they weren't sure what they were doing. Neither were the police. It was a first for everyone, and it broke up quietly. The adults said it must have been communist-inspired, but it wasn't. It was drug-inspired. John's acid and John's stories about San Francisco had inspired the love-in. Donnie at this point was like thousands of other teenagers all over the United States. He was finding it more and more difficult to live in the square community with straight people, always disapproving, always telling him he was wrong. His parents and the establishment were on his back. The only people who understood him, it seemed, were other people who used drugs, the hippies. There were not enough of them at home, so, remembering what John had said, Donnie and his friends left home, and they went to San Francisco. Literally thousands of young people were crowding into San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury in 1967, all seeking the same things: love, understanding, the freedom to use drugs and not to be judged. In their common dreams, the members of the love generation shared their lives, their food, their money, and their drugs. Almost everywhere you went in Haight-Ashbury in those days, someone offered you free drugs. San Francisco was everything Donnie and his friends expected. Nobody hassled them. They were free. They had a little money saved, and life became very groovy. Of course, the rock band that Donnie had wanted was now just an old dream. Living in the Haight seemed timeless. There was no pressure to do anything, no competition, no clamor to succeed. They used drugs now not to escape, not to copy successful rock artists. Now they used drugs because it was part of their lifestyle, and they were hooked on that lifestyle. This is the most dangerous turning point in a young drug user's life. Getting hooked on the lifestyle is the last step before getting hooked on drugs. When the money ran out, Donnie and his friends moved in with some other people into a communal crash pad. Often it was so crowded they had to sleep in shifts, but they were turning on every day, and they didn't notice. Drugs made their life seem less painful. Not everyone turned on to make life more bearable, however. The Grateful Dead in their pad on Ashbury had no money worries. Their rock group was supported by an LSD maker. This man financed groups like the Dead, Country Joe, and Big Brother because they played drug songs. He said once that he knew drug songs would turn kids on, and when the music turned them on, they would want to take drugs and run away from home. For a while, Donnie and his friends panhandled for nickels and dimes in the Haight-Ashbury. But finally, they moved to Berkeley, where they had some drug contacts. They put most of their money into drugs. What little food they needed, they would scrounge from grocery stores. They didn't eat much, and they all began to get sick. From time to time, Donnie thought about quitting drugs, but his mind was unclear. Constant use of drugs had left him confused. Donnie needed more and more money to live and to buy drugs, so he started dealing. Eventually, Donnie and Dan were busted. Donnie was arrested for possession of marijuana. For his day in court, he cut his hair and dressed in straight clothes to impress the establishment judge. It worked because he was young and looked straight, and because it was a first offense. Donnie was placed on probation for 3 years. In 1968, shooting speed became a fad in San Francisco. There was a great demand for speed, methadone, and to meet that demand, underground factories went into production all over the city. They were usually operated by harmless-looking hippies like these men. Their factory was in an apartment. The factories did a brisk business, and the chemists made big profits. San Francisco became a major source of supply for speed for many cities around the country. At this factory, they even beat out the rugs to remove any evidence of spilled drugs. These men were eventually arrested, never knowing if anyone had died from taking their speed. 1,000 miles away, back in Donnie's hometown, some of the kids were becoming hooked on speed. They had to wait for the dealers to bring it in from the coast. When the word spread that a shipment was on the way, they would gather at a head shop and wait nervously for the speed to arrive. Most businessmen these days travel by plane. Dealers in the business of drugs also travel by plane much of the time. Here at the airport in Donnie's hometown, a dealer and a shipment of speed arrived on schedule. The flight was uneventful, but things went wrong on the ground. The police were waiting. Agents waited until the dealers entered the airport building, and then they moved in on him. It was bad news for the heads in Donnie's town. This time, the police picked up 2 dealers who came in on that plane, and they also picked up the supplies of speed they brought with them. Back at the head shop, the kids heard something had gone wrong. One young man who had been on a dwindling supply of speed for several days freaked out. The police knew that speed was sold at the store. There was not much they could do since the new supply never arrived. The police did call for the boy's grandmother, who soon arrived. She did not know what was wrong with her grandson because she did not recognize the symptoms. The cops told her he was sick, and so she took him away. Across town, a love-in. Love-ins in Donnie's hometown had become a regular scene since John had come to town 18 months ago with his free acid and his stories of love-ins. 6 months after Donnie was busted, he was back in town. Donnie came home not to begin life all over again, for he was completely hooked on the drug lifestyle. He and Dan were big dealers now. They were the connections from San Francisco, coming to a love-in to sell drugs. By this time, Donnie and Dan were using speed regularly. The boys had heard a lot of talk about how speed kills, how it can destroy the mind. When they were on a trip, they didn't care about such things, and when they were down, they found they could not think clearly about the danger. While drugs were changing Donnie in his hometown, drugs had killed the Haight-Ashbury. The Haight became deserted. Good times turned bad. Good trips became bummers. The shortage of money, the increasing use of harder drugs, the overcrowding and the disease all turned Haight-Ashbury into a bad scene. In 1 year, there were more than 20 murders alone. You couldn't wipe it all out with a trip. Many of the hippies migrated to communes in the country or became wandering nomads with no real homes. Those who stayed behind had to be tough to survive. Many found it impossible to survive, and there were many suicides. The gentle people with the flowers in their hair were long gone. There were still a few of them out in Middle America. The summer love-in in the Haight-Ashbury became a sordid nightmare of viciousness, squalor, and hopelessness. The dreams had been built on drugs, and in the end, as it is with drugs, it only got worse and worse and worse. Since full-time hippie communities always become bad scenes, instant Haight-Ashburys, called rock festivals, promised to rekindle the dreams of peace and beautiful things. And in 1969, there was a great festival, Woodstock. But this is not Woodstock, this is Altamont. Mick Jagger was its star, but the underground does not like to talk about Altamont because it was a bad trip. The vibrations at Altamont were bad vibrations. People freaked out from overdoses of drugs, 4 people died, everyone was uptight. The organizers hired a group of Hell's Angels to provide protection for Mick Jagger, and they paid them $500 worth of beer. Jagger's violent music and the widespread use of drugs made the mood of the crowd violent. There was fighting, and as the Rolling Stones sang one of their hit songs, they watched the Hell's Angels murder a man in front of the stage.
Brothers and sisters, everybody be cool now, come on. We always have something very funny happens when we start that number. Is there anyone there that's hurt?
That's why Altamont isn't talked about very much. If the drug generation was undergoing such a violent change, what then of their idols, the rock artists who once inspired them and sometimes still did? Many of the big names in the rock, the big stars, were in trouble. Many, Tea Party. John went to prison for 3 years. They found 1,000 tabs of LSD when he was arrested. This man left home soon after the party. He stayed high on drugs, marijuana, and LSD. This boy was arrested in his own home along with his mother and sister. His mother went to jail because her kids kept drugs in the house. The kids were sent to live with relatives. This boy, who took John's LSD, ran away from home the next day, and he took a girl from the party with him. They found him and arrested him for kidnapping. On the left is the girl they say he kidnapped. She was returned to her parents, who placed her in a hospital for shock treatment. Now she cannot recognize her old friends. And this man, the leader of the local rock group, well, he grew quite successful and quite rich by selling drug songs to teenagers like Donnie. But the man never met Donnie. Donnie and his friend Dan went back into court. In fact, they were arrested 4 times on different charges. They were arrested here for shoplifting food, but they convinced the judge they were hungry, and he let them go. He even let them keep the food. It was a lucky break. But one lucky break didn't matter much for Donnie, for now he was in deep trouble. Now, back in Berkeley, Donnie had found that marijuana, acid, speed, STP, TCP, and mescaline and all the other drugs he had taken no longer wiped out the pain of his existence. He needed something stronger. He needed heroin. Yes, this was Donnie in 1969. This is the kid you saw at the beginning of this film. This is the establishment's vision of a drug user, and now you know why. It took only 3 years for Donnie to progress up the drug scale to heroin. Now he is hooked. He robs and steals from other hippies to support his habit. He doesn't go to rock festivals. He is not a flower child. He is a heroin addict. And in this scene, he has just tricked a boy, Tex, into buying him heroin. But he and Dan took most of it. This is where Donnie's journey in time has brought him, fighting over a fix of heroin.
Tex, you just put it down.
I don't even know why I'm crying. I'm sorry, I forgot. I don't know what's wrong. It's a smack.
I know. So why don't you sit back and groove with it instead of hassling with it? Yeah?
Yeah. God, I don't. Why am I crying? Dig it. I really am.
Because you want to bring a good message across, Tex.
No, man, I don't know why I'm doing it.
We ain't gonna feel sorry for you, man.
Yeah, I don't want you to, man. Really. I don't know why I'm doing that. I didn't know I was hassling. I never hassled over a cotton.
Yeah. Well, forget about it. Let's start a new trip. Try
yeah. Let me do it, Dan, please.
God damn, Tex.
Come on,
Shut
man.
up.
I'm always going to get in trouble for it.
You're not getting in trouble. Except unless you keep hassling, then you're going to get in trouble.
That's really funny.
You stop and think about it.
No, you stop and think about it.
He's already
I got
doing it.
Yeah,
yeah, he's doing it, but you're hassling while he's doing it.
I'd just like to do it. I already said I was going to do it. Chuck didn't do it. I left my cotton wet for me to do it.
Back in jail, he suffered through the pains of withdrawal. Without heroin in jail, his health began to improve. But as soon as he was free, he went back to heroin. Donnie saw this film and he wanted to say this to teenagers who are thinking of experimenting with drugs.
Well, used to be, you know, but sometimes it makes me a little sick, I guess, maybe, to think that I can get into, you know, go as far as that, you know, shooting. It's nothing that I would advise anybody to do. It's when it kind of, you know, strung out and everything, I never would turn anybody on for the first time because I wouldn't want to be involved in anybody else getting, you know, into it or getting strung out on it. When I was taking acid and things, to me, I didn't want anything to do with it because all I had heard about, you know, heroin addicts and junkies, you know, they were just really bad or something. But most people feel about it, and that's the way I felt, too. Just didn't want anything to do with it.
Dropped acid when I was 18. I was over at these people's house one night. This guy I went to school with was over there and asked me if I wanted to try some acid. I had read about it in the newspapers and heard a few friends talk about it, so I was curious. I was pretty jacked up on marijuana, so I decided to try it, and I dropped it. I don't know what I was waiting for, a flash or a rush or whatever, but I kept sitting there waiting, and nothing was happening. So I got up and then went to the dresser and put on a pair of pink capris and a green and brown blouse. I thought the colors were beautiful. So we tripped down to Market Street, and I decided to buy a hot dog. I was very hungry, and I had put mustard and ketchup and relish in the usual, and I put the hot dog up to my mouth, and somebody started screaming. I didn't know what was happening, so I looked up at my friend Terry and said, "Did you hear that? Didn't you hear someone scream?" He said no. I got the hot dog up to my mouth again, and I was ready to bite, and the scream got louder. And it hit me. No, it couldn't be. And I looked down at the hot dog, and there was a face on him. Eyes, nose, a mouth. I had put the ketchup to where it looked like his hair. And he started telling me that I couldn't eat him. That he had a wife and 7 kids at home to support. And I stood there with this hot dog and asked Terry, "Do you know this hot dog is talking to me?" And he says, "Nah, let's get out of here." He thought I was just faking. And I told him, "Look at the thing, he's got a face, and he's screaming." And the guy finally looked over, and he got on the same trip that I was on. And we sat there carrying on a conversation with that hot dog. Finally, I decided I was just hallucinating, so I put it in my mouth and bit down. It screamed so loud that you could hear it all over town, so I had to throw it on the ground and step on it. And I was jumping on this hot dog in the middle of Market Street. I realized that I had murdered it. And I took off screaming down the street, scared.
I turned to barbiturates because grass wasn't having that much effect on me. Me and my friend had been smoking for about 2-3 years. It wasn't a thing to be identified by anymore. Everybody was using weed. We used to smoke 30-40 numbers a day. You'd get high, but it just didn't have the same feeling. So I tried reds, barbiturates. I just needed something new. I got them from friends. They were on H, but they always had jars of pills around. It's just like heavy drinking, but a more sluggish feeling. I was dropping Red Devils, Seacano, at first. Later on, I fixed it. Your perception is all out of whack. You can't tell depth perception, how close things are to you. I fell asleep in my car driving. I was lucky I was at a red light. I got woke up by a cop. He didn't know I was under. I told him I'd just gotten off work. Another time I was home. I thought I was acting real good when I walked by my mother. I turned the corner and walked right into a wall. I passed out. I woke up in the same place the next morning. Kicking a barbiturate habit is like nothing you've ever kicked. With heroin, you get sick, vomit, can't eat or sleep. With barbiturates, you have all of these and more. You go into convulsions. The strain on your body when you kick reds or yellows is about all you can take.
I'd been using amphetamines for the past 3 years. When I was 17, I weighed 210. Now I weigh 168. I went to the doctor's office because Mom thought maybe I had a weight problem. The doctor gave me some amphetamines, weight pills. Well, I took a few too many and felt groovy. So I started taking too many every day. Once you start tripping on amphetamines, you fall into a group of people where you meet all kinds of connections, especially if you'd been using something before that. To get a bigger kick faster, I started fixing crystals, methadone. Speed gave me confidence, like I could do just about anything. You're more confident. Or you wouldn't do anything stupid, like jumping off a building. You just feel real, well, your heart's beating real good. You feel like you're home because you can rap, talk, a lot more. Get dates much easier, too. I was losing weight rapidly. Sometimes I stayed up 6 or 7 days. When you're up, you don't eat or sleep. And you get to where your mind goes blank. You don't even know what's happening. You're wired. My biggest trip on speed was repairing radios. I'd start out with one radio, and then I'd have to take another radio apart to get a tube or something. And before I knew it, I had a second radio torn apart and would have to get a third radio. And I'd tear that radio apart, too. And then I'd fall asleep. By the time I'd fallen out, I'd ruined 3 radios. You know what to do with the first radio, but you can't do anything. A lot of people say you couldn't get hooked on crystals, but I got strung out. When I was down, you know, like if I lay down to go to sleep after being up about a week, I'd wake up with cramps, feeling low, and couldn't get out of bed. I'd have to fix in order to get up. They roll you physically. Your skin gets discolored, your teeth get rotten. I'd always be nervous if I didn't fix. Oh, a lot of people say it's just emotional or psychological. But I did get physically dependent on them.
I was 17 when I started fixing stuff. I'd stayed away. There were people using all this time. Everybody was ahead of me, but I was catching up. I thought soon I'd be accepted. This is a bad feeling to have, you know, and heroin was a solution. It didn't bother me for a couple of years. I was always saying no, and everybody was always heckling me. I was saying no mainly because I was scared to stick the needle in my arm. One day I was over at my friend's house. There were about 8 of my buddies over there. I was over there sitting on the couch, up on marijuana. Well, my girlfriend had gotten hooked on stuff and said that they were going to have a party. So later on, she fixed some stuff and asked me if I'd like to fix some too. I said no, and they just all turned around. They made me feel rejected. So I said, yeah, and they all turned around and started smiling at me, and it made me happy. I was shaking so bad when they stuck the needle in, I didn't know what was going to happen. I had heard that this was the big thing, and I'd seen movies on it in school which don't give the right effects on it. They teach you it's dreamlike. It just heavily tranquilizes you. You're just comfortable. It makes your body, I don't know how to explain it. It makes your mind work just the way you want it to. I felt I could do just about anything I wanted, like talk to anybody without feeling insecure. Everywhere you sit, you're just comfortable. Plus, it gives you more confidence than crystals. At least to me it does. To other people it didn't. Heroin's not a thing you usually use in groups. I've been to houses where people are lined up, ready to use an outfit. There are many things to be done to prepare the stuff. Maybe there isn't enough outfits. Maybe 15 people are in the room around a table yelling, hurry up, fix. Not necessarily because they're coming down, but just because they want to fix now. They got their stuff, and they want to fix it. Only a few times that I ever fix stuff did I walk out of a place with a penny in my pocket. After that first party with H, I met a guy who could supply me with the stuff. But after a while, my habit got too big where he couldn't support me. So he introduced me to somebody higher up. He was about 50. I got to where the habit cost me around $60, $80 a day. I had to cash checks and burglarize to support it. When I got arrested, I was put in jail. It was there I realized I was really strung out. When I came down, I was sick. My stomach cramped up. I sweated and vomited, you know. But the physical symptoms didn't bother me as much as the mental effects. You're laying there by yourself and thinking about things like how it smells when it's cooking. It tends to make you weaker than you are. It feels like everything has been drained from your bones, and your bones are hollow. They feel like nothing. Then you break out in a cold sweat. It bothers you because you can never get comfortable. After I was comfortable for 18 months, there was no way I could sit to be comfortable.
This is the straight society, the orderly, well-managed, well-disciplined establishment. It is made possible by the Protestant ethic. Work is noble. But not everyone embraces these halls. In each city across the land, there exists another culture whose very philosophy and way of life rejects the fierce competition and its material rewards, and in so doing, refutes the order and discipline of the establishment. The hippies, perhaps more than any other social phenomenon, brought the drug issue to the surface, for most of them are children of middle-class and upper-class families. Thousands of snapshots on police station walls remain the only link between many of America's most affluent families and the children who embodied their great expectations. Nearly everyone in the hippie community smokes marijuana, whether they call it pot, grass, hemp, gauge, joint, or Mary Jane. The marijuana is the basic background for the shared drug experience. The experience is shared to such an extent that roach pipes are always in demand. A roach is a marijuana butt, and it requires some form of holder for those last few drags. The new generation, whether they are runaways or rebels in residence, use marijuana as a symbol of discontent with the basic values of the establishment. For some, there exists a social imperative beyond flaunting society's rules. For these adventurers, the mind-expanding drugs open a window on a whole new frontier.
We're lost in a beautiful energy, an energy of life, an energy of love. It's the energy that's in every living entity. It's that energy that we can't know about before we're born, and the energy that's going to happen to us when we die. But we know about the energy before us, man and woman and child and animal. Not kill animals, not kill a fly. And if we love all that energy, we'll love life so much that we'll never die, because you'll be so sure that you're part of God. So poetry of love.
With LSD, the user believes he is discovering inner truth, that he is making a pilgrimage to the soul, that he has achieved unity with the universe. Under the psychedelic influence of hallucinatory drugs, the user often feels that he is experiencing the supreme private joy of spontaneous creation, both in music and in the visual arts. Both are brought together by the discotheque in a unique blend of Art Nouveau and acid rock. The use of LSD, particularly on the college campus and even in hippie circles, is on the downswing. Recent publicity linking the drug with severe psychotic reactions, chromosome breaks, and serious birth defects has had a sobering effect. In the runaway colonies, those who forsake LSD seem to move in one of two directions: meditation or methadone. First, the meditators, guru or swami, they band together in communes, attempting to live a Thoreau-like existence. They are relatively harmless, true flower children, soldiers of peace in a gentle revolution. The second group finds its kicks liquefying on a hot spoon. Methadone, perhaps the fastest jolt found so far in the amphetamines, can be counted on to provide a 6-hour surge of euphoria.
Tried methadone, which I liked, which I became very addicted to. And then from there, the actual suicide attempts have been in the last 6 or 7 months, the real ones. All the attention I got, I was sent to a psychiatrist who taught me how to play chess at age 9. I wouldn't talk to him. So then my parents got quite upset because of the money they were spending. So then I tried again. They took me away from the psychiatrist for a while and changed schools on me. And then from there, several more attempts, like swallowing aspirin, cutting my wrists, which doesn't work because blood coagulates, and so forth. I called my parents, and I was addicted to amphetamine bisulfate crystal, which is that you shoot, and it's a crystal, you know what that is. And I called them, and I said I was addicted. I wanted to come home. I'd do anything. I'd, conform to your standards, or your rules, so forth, go to LSUNO, be the perfect model of everything. And they said, no, you'd upset the family, and sent me off to Oregon. And I withdrew 5 days, cold turkey, on a Greyhound bus going to Oregon.
Methadone, LSD, heroin are the exception with the drug community. Marijuana is the common denominator. It's used universally within the hippie cults, in the ghettos, and in the high schools of every social and economic level.
As a rough estimate, I would say that at least 10% of the students have used and are using marijuana. Now, the frequency may vary, and it's pretty difficult to estimate, but also probably a very significant thing is that acceptance is gaining steadily, and the usage is really increasing very, very rapidly.
But with marijuana comes eventual confrontation with the law. Even though many authorities consider it less harmful than alcohol, its mere possession, in the eyes of the federal statutes, brings a minimum of 2 years and selling a maximum of 40.
If we got a few seconds, I want to say something about what happened to Barry McGuire. Barry McGuire wasn't holding any grass, and he wasn't doing anything. He got busted anyway. And he's on his way down to Malibu jail now, and his wife is trying to get him out, and they're not holding any bread.
They've been known to plant things on you, like if you're in a place like, say, the Seven Seas, they'll plant something in your pocket if they want you. And they don't even have to find something. They could find an empty matchbox, and by the time it gets to the lab, it's full of grass.
Norm and his friends. This time, New Orleans is the pad. But the complaint against the establishment remains the same. Why should the adults put us down? They have their own kind of drugs, coffee, cigarettes, and a host of synthetic crutches that range from sleeping pills and tranquilizers to benzodrine, but mainly booze.
Nationally, really, the marijuana laws nationally it's just a thing by the alcohol companies to keep their thing going because, who'd drink if they had grass, man?
feel that marijuana is a beautiful drug because it's much safer than alcohol. LSD, heroin, smack, speed are no good because they will wreck a person's physical composition. That we do not allow. We started this club as a thing because a lot of our members are tired of a lot of society's rules. We like to be ourselves. We like to go out, get high, ride bikes, and do what we want to do. Because we wear these cutaways, it's a symbol of unconformity.
San Francisco, New Orleans, and New York. Each city has its own legion of disenchanted youth, each casting its dissenting vote against the establishment. The ballots may be written on marijuana, methadone, or motorcycles. But in each case, they are putting us down, and the vote is an international one. Britain, traditionally the very seat of the establishment. It's ironic that after 9 centuries of greatness, this conservative kingdom in her maturity should give birth to the hippie. A phenomenon throughout Europe, the Middle East, and many parts of Asia is the constant migration of young people, an international beatnik set permanently drifting. In Rome, the gathering spot is the Spanish Steps. For the enterprising migrant with surplus drugs in his rucksack, there are ample business opportunities.
I know how to earn money out of it. If I bring a hash from Istanbul, or from Beirut, or from Morocco, or from Northern Africa, which is very cheap to get it there. You can get a whole kilo, sometimes with 5, 6, or not more than $10, and you can sell it. Here in Italy, it's very expensive.
Like the Spanish Steps, Jenner's in Istanbul is another beatnik capistrano. It is a clearinghouse for international drug news, a congregating point for the who's who among teenage wayfarers, and even serves as an effective post office. Nearly all of the world's ancient and exotic cities have certain hotels and restaurants not listed in the travel guides, but nevertheless engaged in a thriving business.
It's a very interesting little scene here in Istanbul, and it's becoming very, very sort of well known. Not sweepingly well known, but known in a great number of places all over the world, in Europe and in America. There's a hotel where a lot of people live around here, this hotel that I mentioned before. And the name of the hotel is on the lips of people that are getting off boats in Europe from America. People have come to this town, to Istanbul, and asked where such and such a hotel is. They've heard it from people in America, and it's interesting to me that such a small little place in a little back street has become so well known.
These gathering places are virtually the United Nations in miniature. Young travelers come from Australia, London, Stockholm, and recently in ever-increasing numbers from Pennsylvania, Indiana, Oregon. They pass in an endless progression through the cities of the Holy Land. They huddle for comfort in caves on the island of Crete. Why do they wander? For some, undoubtedly, it is the adventure of youth, a healthy restlessness, a chance to participate in this once-in-a-lifetime odyssey and sample the fires of spring. For many others, it is a pilgrimage to the mystic repositories of wisdom and truth. These intellectual and spiritual objectives, or what often passes for them, become readily apparent when you're in the Himalayas at 4,500 feet, particularly when the company is good and the roach pipes are lit. Now time and space become distorted and the well springs of energy rush forth.
This is probably the fourth people coming for pilgrimages for centuries from all parts of the world. I believe they deposited a great deal of their energy here. Those people which remain here, they find this energy simply by meeting so many beautiful people.
If their aimless searching is a thinly guised excuse to evade responsibility, then in effect they have not escaped at all for even at the threshold of Shangri-La, they become the focal point of world concern. And ironically, concern from that part of the world they have the least use for, the straight society.
Many of them claim they have found some kind of new feelings, new insights, a new religious experience. But I would like to point out that these, and I have known between 1,200 and 1,500 addicts in the last 10 years of my life, that I have not found one of them who can claim that they have taken a new position on values, have been able to, if you will, move out into the world and find a more comfortable existence, have changed things, have made life more meaningful for somebody else. I find more and more a selfish existence, more and more self-centered, and less concerned about the problems of the world, and more concerned about the escape from the problems of the world.
But even the straight society often makes hasty judgments, which instead of strengthening communication between parents and their young, actually drives a wedge in deeper.
It's important that we not equate something like long hair, which many of us don't like because we can't tell the boys from the girls, but to equate long hair with the danger of taking a drug like LSD is really a tragedy. And the youngster, when we equate the two, is liable to turn out and stop listening to us and then go on and really take these other drugs.
Over the last several years, cases of drug abuse and addiction and random use of drugs have given rise to progressively increasing numbers of admissions to psychiatric hospitals like this one here, Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital. There have been large numbers of mixed types of drugs taken by populations, including, for the first time in the last few years, young people, middle-class young people that have given rise to admissions to a psychiatric hospital with acute psychiatric manifestations.
Hey, see, there's speed freaks and then there's meth heads. That's the difference. Most of the people I know are not speed freaks. They're meth heads. Now, you can make an A-head by giving a guy too much. I almost come close to being an A-head. Hey, when I was young, years ago, we had a set down here at Tetanus. I think I'm about the only one that's got any sanity left.
The harsh reality of the narcotics war does not offer the easy camaraderie of Istanbul or the spiritual reward of Kathmandu. But Bellevue, as well as hundreds of other psychiatric hospitals, offers a road back to responsibility. But some cannot be reached, at least not with the methods and the answers in current use. Drug takers abound in ever-increasing numbers, and not always in the conspicuous hippie community.
I know that a lot of people think that junkies, addicts, wander around the world dressed as hippies with beads and flowers in their hair. But it isn't true of all of them. Peter was very much a boy who liked to wear nice clothes, was always clean.
Perhaps the most painful experience for a parent is having a son or daughter who outwardly conforms, but who still conducts the pilgrimage, who still seeks the high, and through his very secrecy avoids detection, and at the same time, possible help.
He was always dependable about being home on time at night, 11, 11:30, which wasn't late. But during all this period, we later found he was on drugs. After the first 2 years, when he'd been picked up in possession of drugs, it became obvious that his future was very indefinite. We were advised by doctors and psychiatrists and probation people that he was heading towards an eventual death. And shortly after his 20th birthday, he died of an overdose of heroin.
Man has always searched for instant happiness in a pill. The search is going on as more and more potent psychedelics are developed. The search goes on with many kinds of substances. Our youngsters out here are drinking diluted murine eye wash, they're smoking crushed aspirin, they're drinking band deodorant, they're injecting accent meat tenderizer, always in search for the magic high, the magic experience. I think what we as adults have to do is to invite the youngsters to join our adult world and make it a better place. We have to admit we haven't done such a perfect job, but to show them that the answer is not to drop out by dulling their consciousness or changing their awareness, but to help become activists and help us create a better world.
Perhaps there is a straight society, a universal establishment that many of our youth reject. But they will not create a better society by freaking out in Kathmandu or turning on in Los Angeles. They must face up to what they are running away from, work constructively to bring about change if change is needed. And we, as the straight society, must reach out and help with honesty, compassion, and a sincere desire to understand not only them, but ourselves as well. For we represent what they are reacting against.